WATAN TV present the news with the help of Lot Binder, Harjeet Sandhu, Uday Nayak, Bernadette Young, Sunil Kalia.
The Trump administration has been racing to complete framework trade deals with major trading partners before the U.S. Supreme Court rules on whether to strike down Trump's reciprocal tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. On Saturday, Trump teased a potential deal for India to buy Venezuelan oil after the U.S. seized Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in a military raid in early January. The deal followed months of tense trade negotiations between the world's two largest democracies. Last August, Trump doubled duties on imports from India to 50% to pressure New Delhi to stop buying Russian oil, and earlier this month said the rate could rise again if it did not curb its purchases. Purchases of Venezuelan oil would help replace some of the Russian oil bought by India, the world's third biggest oil importer. India relies heavily on oil imports, covering around 90% of its needs, and importing cheaper Russian oil has helped lower its import costs since Moscow invaded Ukraine in 2022 and Western nations enacted sanctions on its energy exports. Recently, India has begun to slow its purchases from Russia. In January, they were around 1.2 million barrels per day, and are projected to decline to about 1 million BPD in February and 800,000 BPD in March. The US and India have finalized a major trade deal after months of tariff tension. Trump tells US tariffs on Indian goods fall to 18%, down from 50%. This video explains what it means for China, global supply chains, energy geopolitics, and why India gains a strategic edge in the new trade order. President Donald Trump says the US and India have finalized a broad trade agreement. It comes after months of tariff tension and a hard public climb down from Washington's earlier penalties. The headline number, US tariffs on Indian goods come down to 18% after earlier stacking up to 50%. The real impact goes beyond exports. This is also about who gets picked in global supply chains and who gets boxed out. In today's tariff map, a few percentage points can decide where factories move and where orders go. India now sits closer to U.S. preferred partners in Asia and farther away from the China bracket. China still faces far higher effective tariffs, and that gap matters most in low-margin industries where exporters survive on thin profits. That's why sectors like textiles, apparel, gems, and jewelry and engineering goods could see quick gains in the U.S. market. The U.S. is India's biggest trading partner and cheaper access is a direct advantage. The larger prize is the China Plus One shift. Global firms don't want to bet their entire supply chain on one country. India already has the ingredients multinationals ask for: a large workforce, a growing consumer base, and government incentives like the Production-Linked Incentive Scheme. Now add the U.S. tariff edge. That combination makes India more attractive as a plus one hub, especially for electronics, pharmaceuticals, and automobiles. Some shifts are already visible. Apple has been expanding assembly outside China, including in India and Vietnam. This pact could speed that up, and India isn't betting on one corridor either. Trade tracks are moving with the US, UK, and India is also working towards a major deal with the European Union, with timelines pointing to operational rollout later in the decade.
Prime Minister had a telecon with President Trump on Monday. Post that call and post the tweet by President Trump, Prime Minister thanked President Trump for the reduction in reciprocal tariff. Prime Minister noted that Made in India products will now be exported to the United States at a reduced tariff of 18%. Your question about tariff. So let me refer you to the statements that have been made by both sides. Prime Minister had a telecon with President Trump on Monday. Post that call and post the tweet by President Trump, Prime Minister thanked President Trump for the reduction in reciprocal tariff. Prime Minister noted that Made in India products will now be exported to the United States at a reduced tariff of 18%. This trade agreement, as we see it, will give a major boost to our exports to the United States. It will be a major boost to the labor-intensive industries here in India, create new job opportunities, growth and prosperity for our people. Also, let me say that the US side has also clarified that the final figure of tariff is 18%. Sorry? दोनों देशों के तरफ से बयान आया है इस मुद्दे पर, टैरिफ के मुद्दे पे। हमारी, जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री की राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बातचीत हुई थी। बातचीत के बाद, उस कॉन्वर्सेशन के बाद, उसके बाद जब प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप ने ट्वीट किया, उसके बाद प्रधानमंत्री ने उनको धन्यवाद दिया कि भारत पर अब जो टैरिफ है, रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ, उसको नीचे लाया गया है। और साथ ही साथ प्रधानमंत्री ने यह भी व्यक्त किया कि भारत में बने पदार्थ, प्रोडक्ट्स, अब अमेरिका जब वो निर्यात होंगे तो उन पर घटा हुआ टैरिफ जो 18% का है वो लागू होगा। और इस व्यापार संधि से हमारे निर्यात को, हमारे में देश में जो श्रम आधारित उद्योग है उसको, और साथ ही साथ यहाँ पर अन्य व्यवसाय के क्या कहते हैं, नौकरी के बहुत सारे अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ पैदा होंगे और हमारे लोगों के लिए, उनके भलाई के और उनके हित में है ये। साथ ही साथ आपको मैं बताना चाहूँगा कि अमेरिकी सरकार की तरफ से ये खुलासा किया गया है कि जो फाइनल जो फिगर है, जो अंक है टैरिफ का, वो 18%। इन सो फार एज इंडियाज एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी और एनर्जी सोर्सिंग इज कंसर्न्ड, the government has stated publicly on several occasions, including me here, that ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion Indians is the supreme priority of the government. Diversifying our energy sourcing in keeping with objective market conditions and evolving international dynamics is at the core of our strategy to ensure this. All of India's decisions are taken and will be taken with this in mind. See, as far as Venezuela is concerned, it has been a long-standing partner for us in the area of energy, both on the trade side and as also on the investment side. We were importing energy or crude oil from Venezuela till 2019-20, and thereafter we had to stop. Again, we started buying oil from Venezuela in 2023-2024, but had to stop, which were halted because of reimposition of sanctions. As you are aware that Indian PSUs, they have established partnership with the National Oil Company of Venezuela, PDVSA, and they have, our PSUs have maintained presence in the country since 2008. Consistent with our approach to energy security, India remains open to exploring the commercial merits of any crude supply options, including from Venezuela.
There's another layer here: energy and geopolitics. Reports say the US is resigning an extra punitive duty linked to India's purchases of Russian oil, and that this rollback is tied to India shifting energy buying. Trump claimed India would halt Russian oil purchases and buy more energy from the US, possibly from Venezuela, too. He also claimed India would cut tariffs and non-tariff barriers on US goods sharply to zero. But neither side has published a detailed legal text yet. No proclamation, formal Federal Register notice, timelines, start dates, and exact product lists remain unclear. That uncertainty matters because some promises hit India's sensitive zones. Opening agriculture and dairy is politically explosive. Livelihoods are involved, and a full break from Russian energy is not a simple switch. India has followed a strategy of strategic autonomy, especially after Russia became a discounted crude option post-Ukraine war, helping India manage domestic, music, energy costs. The likely reality: selective shifts, not dramatic surrender. This is also why the way the deal was announced matters. Prime Minister Modi's message was shorter and careful compared to Trump's. Stronger trade momentum can open doors in other areas like security, cooperation, defense, and Quad's Indo-Pacific agenda. The US-India Strategic Partnership Forum has described this as a win-win and said the momentum could extend to critical minerals and AI. In plain terms, trade becomes the glue, and once the glue hardens, it's harder for supply chains, music, and strategic alignment to drift back. They've been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Not with tariff shocks and disruptions becoming the new normal. This deal makes India look more predictable to boardrooms. India's chief economic advisor has said investors hate uncertainty and tariff clarity helps unlock long-term decisions, and those decisions are made for decades, not for one quarter. Even if tariffs change later, the relocation trend can still stick. This story is presented by cameraman Uday Nayak, sound recordist Rajiv Maheshwari, and the team of Charlie Films India. For WATAN TV.